chair of the Local Governments Committee, the Governmental Operations Committee, and finally the Environmental Conservation Committee before taking office as the State Comptroller in February 2007. As chair of the Assembly Environmental Conservation Committee, Tom DiNapoli introduced many major pieces of environmental legislation that ultimately became law. Many of these bills were priority issues of Earth Day Live Days past. These include the Pesticide Neighbor Notification Law, which was passed in 2000. Cheers! I know there are a lot of newcomers here, but I know also there are a lot of people who were here back when we worked on this for years through Earth Day Live Day. The Superfund Brownfield Law, which was passed in 2003. The Bigger, Better Bottle Bill, which Tom DiNapoli introduced in 2002, he held hearings on, amended it numerous times, and shepherded through 2 contentious Assembly floor votes. He was with us in spirit when the bill finally passed last year as part of the state budget. Comptroller DiNapoli has continued to advance environmental protections in his new position through initiatives such as establishing a $500 million Green Strategic Investment Program to boost the state's pension fund investments in clean energy technologies and other green investments, and conducting audits examining state agency compliance with environmental sustainability requirements. This may be the first year in Earth Day Live Day history that we have been joined by the New York State Comptroller to speak at our event. So please give a warm welcome to Comptroller Tom DiNapoli.
Very much. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be with you. So when in the full election my opponent somehow uses this picture, you'll all be my witnesses that I was protecting our natural legacy. We weren't fighting, right, guys? This is great. I told John Stouffer, our office, we got to get some outfits like this for our environmental team. I really appreciate the very generous introduction from Laura. Laura and I worked together on so many issues. She is one of the many unsung heroes that are here in the environmental movement. It's great to see some new faces. It's great to see young people here. But I certainly always appreciate the long-standing work that so many people in this room have been involved with on this important issue. Laura highlighted some of the environmental achievements I'm most proud of. But I do want to mention one that I don't think she mentioned, and that, because of course seeing Dick Amper here and Adrian Esposito, I have to mention the very incredible experience of being sponsor of the Long Island Pine Barrens Protection Act, which always has great meaning to me. Where's Dick and Adrian? It's a very, very important achievement. Senator Thompson really put the House on fire with his energy and enthusiasm, and he is a great leader on these issues in the Senate. And back home in Buffalo as well, I had the chance to go to one of his green roundtables where he brought thought leaders and business leaders together, community leaders, about how to advance a green agenda in Western New York. And of course, Assemblyman Bob Sweeney, who followed me as chair of the Environmental Conservation Committee, and was certainly a partner all through the years that I chaired the committee. Even before either of us were chair, he was a partner on so many issues, especially related to marine fisheries, our marine waters, and he's just taken the position of being chair and really expanded the agenda for that committee in such an effective way. He helped tighten up some of the parts of the Brownfield Superfund legislation that needed to be tightened up. He did the hard work on getting the budget bill to be included in the New York State budget. I reminded Laura when I came in, we were talking about the bottle bill. I remember after it became part of the budget, and I would go to events, you know, especially back home where people remember my work in the environment and say, "Oh, great, your bottle bill finally became law." And I said, "Thank you, I'm honored, thank you." And then I ran to somebody who said, "I hate that bottle bill. Where did that ever come from?" I said, "Well, you know, that Bob Sweeney, you know, I don't know what happened to that committee after I left, but he's doing a great job. Give him a round of applause." Here yet, but what a great leader, the original fighter for the bottle bill back in the early 80s, and now in such an important position. You know, Earth Day is always a very important day for us to focus on issues that we care about throughout the year. I remember I was in high school when the first Earth Day started, and I think of all the great progress we made over the years, but I certainly view this agenda when it comes to the environment as very much an unfinished one. And like everything we do in government, most of the time it's incremental, isn't it? We do it step by step. So you're working on issues, some of which have been around for a long time, some of which may be newer, but all of them are important. You know, I know you have a concern about funding. I know as controller it's a very tough time we're going through. You know it's a tough budget time, and that's not going to change overnight. But making sure that when we have the EPF in place, that we have appropriate funding, that when the money is allocated for specific programs, we get the money out the door so the money doesn't accumulate in the fund. We did a report recently that showed how when money accumulates and isn't being spent, it's then taken and used for other budget purposes. And we need to stop that. That's why our audit focus on how agencies are managing grants for EPF, we want to see more efficiency. We don't want to see the paperwork held up so that money can get out the door. The Environmental Protection Fund began when we did the Pine Barrens Protection Act. It began because we needed to have a funding source for that very important initiative. And you look at the great benefits that EPF has given to all communities of the state of New York, we need to preserve that funding stream as we move forward. I know your focus is also on the issues of climate change. And that's an important issue to all of us, not just in terms of the New York State legislation you're advocating for, but when I look at our economy, all the stresses and difficulties in our economy, in our state, in our nation, in the global economy, one of the big issues is risk, and not identifying risk early and not mitigating against it. And when you talk about climate change, you're talking about a big risk, not only in terms of environmental impact, public health impact, but impact in terms of the economy and costs that comes to society if we don't address it. It's one reason why, through my role as trustee of the pension fund, I've worked with Ceres and the Climate Change Investor Network, and we convene investors from all around the globe to look at the issue of how, through the role of being institutional investors, we can move the climate change agenda forward. It's very important we approach that agenda in many ways, and that's why through our corporate governance work, the ways that we engage in the companies that we have investments with, we also try to get companies to address risk, climate change being one of them, as part of their business planning. We have had a particular emphasis on doing this with the coal industry. The risks and the potential liabilities there are well known. And we've had some success. Recently, Council Energy, which is one of the largest, it owns one of the largest Appalachian coal reserves, agreed to adopt a plan to reduce climate change emissions from its operations and from its products. Massey Energy, you've been reading about Massey because the coal mining tragedy where several miners lost their lives is another situation. It's a company where we have filed a shareholder resolution which last year actually garnered 46% of the vote of the shareholders to require that company to come up with an assessment of risk in terms of climate change and environmental issues. We didn't win it last year, but I think we're going to win it this year. And we have other resolutions to require more responsibility out of that company, and I've asked the CEO and the chair to step down and resign because he's not taking into consideration the risks of climate change with that company's operations have expanded to other areas, including worker safety. So I hope you'll join me. Of the Marcellus Shale gas play, the issue of hydrofracking is a very important one from both an environmental and an economic development point of view. Our concern, though, as shareholders is our companies that are involved in this taking into full consideration possible risk, which ultimately could be liability. If you use a technology, if you use chemicals that are going to pollute or cause environmental damage, and then you're going to be sued, you're going to risk the profitability, the viability of the company. So I certainly understand the environmental concern, but there's also risk in terms of shareholder interests and not only the work that you're doing to push for legislation, but the work that we do on your behalf, because when we invest pension fund dollars, we're doing that for all New Yorkers. We want to be sure that companies are not only looking at their bottom line, but looking at the environmental consequences of their activity, because that does affect their bottom line. It does affect their sustainability, and that's a very, very key issue to us. We're working in a proactive way. Laura mentioned that we have a Green Strategic Investment Program. We are looking for New York to be a leader in promoting the emerging green industries, the green economy that's coming. We've made commitments to the HSBC Climate Change Index, the FTSE Environmental Technology Index. We've put money into community preservation corporations, energy efficient mortgages program. So whether it's on housing or new tech